Okay, ladies, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you the end of book 10, starting over here. If you can see my arrow, I'm going to use it a little bit here and there, is to start on page 177. I'm going to read this entire page and then I'm going to discuss it, okay? And then I'll go through the next two pages and so on. There's a few pages here. Okay, so follow along. What we looked at last time when we were in class today is that Odysseus had slept with Circe. He did it to get his men back. As of right now, his men are not turned back from being pigs to humans. Notice that he was not happy after being with her. You know, she's trying to make it like kind of a seduction scene where she's bathing him and giving him food and wine, and he's just not having it. He just is unhappy, and he really just wants his men back. All right, so let's read the top of 177 down. I turned to her at once and said, Circe, where is the captain who could bear to touch this banquet in my place? A decent man would see his company before him first. Put heart in me to eat and drink. You may by freeing my companions. I must see them. But Circe had already turned away, her long staff in her hand, and she left the hall and opened up the sty. I saw her enter, driving those men turned swine to stand before me. She stroked them, each in turn, with some new chrism, and then, behold! Their bristles fell away, the coarse pelt grown upon them by her drug melted away, and they were men again, younger, more handsome, taller than before. Their eyes upon me, each one took my hand, and wild regret and longing pierced them through. So the room rang with sobs, and even Circe pitied that transformation. Exquisite the goddess looked as she stood near me, saying, Son of Laertes and the gods of old, Odysseus, master mariner and soldier, go to the sea beach and see breasting ships. Drag it ashore, full length upon the land. Stow the gear and stores in rock holes under cover. Return, be quick. Bring all of your dear companions. Now, being a man, I could not help consenting. So I went down to the sea beach in the ship, where I found all my other men aboard, weeping, in despair along the benches. Sometimes in farmyards, when the cows return well fed from pasture to the barn, one sees the pens give way before the calves in tumult, breaking through to cluster about their mothers, bumping together, bawling. I'm going to stop here because I'll continue with the next slide. But okay, so going back to the top here, he's telling her that I need my men back. Like, what kind of captain would I be if I celebrated and ate and drank with you and did not get my men back? So she turns. She totally understands. She turns, and all of this green highlight here is how she returns them, right? She takes the chrism and she strokes them as pigs, and one by one they begin to turn into much better versions of themselves than they were before. So they become men again right here. Obviously, Odysseus and the men are both happy, tears, crying to be back to being men. She says, stay. You know, we know everybody wants to be with Odysseus, and we know that Circe is no different. So she says, go down to the sea. Remember, half of the men are down there, and Eurylochos too. Go get your men. Put your ship ashore. Like, dock it really, sturdy, so you can stay here for a while, and bring your companions. So interesting that what he says here in this stanza, where he says, now, being a man, I could not help consenting. So is this an excuse? Saying, well, I'm a man and she's a beautiful woman. Of course I said yes to her. I feel like it's a little bit of an excuse. His job is to get home to his wife and family. That's what he keeps saying he wants to do. But on the opposite page of that, he tends to get himself in these tangles. So he agrees to her, and he goes and puts the dock up, leaves the boat, and has all the men come back. Notice this simile here at the bottom. There is not necessarily, let's see, maybe it's more like a metaphor almost, because there is no like or as in here, but Homer is comparing seeing Odysseus coming back to his men as if little calves see their mother and they're like pushing each other out of the way to get to their mother who's walking towards them. So that's what the simile is describing. It's a really nice image. Okay, so I'm going to start here and then I'm going to collapse this page to our next page. Just that way, oops, my crew poured around me when they saw me come, their faces wet with tears as if they saw their homeland and the crags of Ithaca, even the very town where they were born. And weeping still, they all cried out in greeting, Prince, what joy is this, your safe return. Now Ithaca seems here, and we in Ithaca. But tell us now, what death befell our friends? And speaking gently, I replied, First, we must get the ship high on the shingle and stow our gear and stores in clefts of rock for cover. Then come, follow me, to see your shipmates in the magic house of Circe, eating and drinking, endlessly regaled. They turned back as commanded to this work, and one lagged and tried to hold the others. Eurylochus it was who blurted out, Where now, poor remnants? Is it devil's work you long for? Will you go to Circe's hall? Swine, wolves, and lions she will make of us all, beasts of her courtyard, bound by her enchantment. Remember those Cyclops held? Remember shipmates who made that visit with Odysseus, the daring man? They died for his foolishness. When I heard this, I had a mind to draw my blade that swung against my side and chop him, bowing his head to the ground. Kinsman or no kinsman, close to me though he was. But others came between, saying to stop me. Prince, we can leave him. If you say the word, let him stay here on guard. As for ourselves, show us the way to Circe's magic hall. So all turned inland, leaving shore and ship, and Eurylochus. He too came on behind, fearing the rough edge of my tongue. Meanwhile, at Circe's hand, the rest were gently bathed, anointed with sweet oil, and dressed afresh in tunics and new cloaks with fleecy lining. We found them all at supper when we came. But greeting their old friend once more, the crew could not hold back their tears. And now again the rooms rang with sobs. Then Circe, loveliest of all immortals, came to counsel me. Son of Laertes and the god of old, Odysseus, master mariner and soldier, enough of weeping fits. I know, I too, what you endured upon the inhuman sea, what odds you met on land from hostile men. Remain with me and share my meat and wine. Restore behind your ribs those gallant hearts that served you in the old days, when you sailed from stony Ithaca. Now parched and spent, your cruel wandering is all you think of, never of joy after so many blows. As we were men, we could not help consenting. So day by day we lingered, feasting long on roasts and wine, until a year grew fat. But when the passing months and wheeling seasons brought the long summery days, the pause of summer, my shipmates one day summoned me and said, Captain, shake off this trance and think of home, if home indeed awaits us, if we shall ever see your own well-timbered hall on Ithaca. They made me feel a pang, and I agreed. I'm going to stop here, even though there's a little left, and I'm going to explain. Okay, going back to the left side of this page. The last image I left you with was Odysseus walking up to his men as if babies were expecting their mama cow. And they all cry. But the men, remember, didn't come with Odysseus. It was just him. The other men who were pigs, who are now men again, are enjoying Circe and her, I guess, women servants, and they're getting bathed and all that. So they're all like, oh my gosh, where are our friends? What happened to them? What happened? And Odysseus says to them, listen, stow the ship and come with me. We're staying. We're staying for a while. And Eurylochus, who is still scared, I guess, of Circe and her tricks, he reminds them, like he kind of goes against Odysseus, even though he's kind of his second in command guy. He doesn't trust Odysseus's decision. And he says, where are you people going? Like, don't you remember what happened? Every time we follow this guy, he leads us into some sort of disaster. Why would you go? Now, Odysseus says he thought for a moment about drawing his sword and slicing his head off, but he doesn't, because he's mostly level-headed. And all the men agree to go. Eurylochos does not want to go, but of course he doesn't want to be the one left behind. So he kind of drags his head and, in the back of the crew as he's kind of following them up the path. So they all do end up at Circe's place again. Again with the hospitality and the bathing and the drinking and the eating and the everything they could possibly want. And she says, just like Calypso said, stay with me. Like, I know you faced trouble on the seas and you've been through so much. Stay here, remain with me, because she is now in love with him. Now, again, we see the same excuse about the gender. We were men. We could not help consenting. So Homer is telling us here, again, they stay. They stay for the pure, like, manliness of being men and to be with these women. And they stay a whole year, an entire year. And then finally, somebody kind of comes to their senses here in the yellow highlight and talks about, like, Odysseus, like, let's go. You need to move a little bit and we need to head home. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording here because I only get 15 minutes to record and I'm up to 11. So let's stop here and then I'll make a second smaller recording.